I think anything that gets people out and gets them active in the outdoors, any subject like that, I think is very appropriate for today. And I think Eau Claire, in its setting here in northwestern Wisconsin, offers a great place to saunter.
I would think so, with all outside that we have. Well, why don't you, for some of our elderly people who are going to take a little notion on this and want to saunter, what are some of the places within the city now that you know of well that would be good places for them to saunter?
Well, Pat, probably the best area and the best known area would be Carson Park. I think everybody in Eau Claire is familiar on how to get to Carson Park and familiar with the park itself. But I'm not sure that everybody in Eau Claire has been to all the places in Carson Park that might be good for sauntering. I think traditionally people go to Carson Park and they'll go around the roadways, which certainly is an option if they want to stick to the roadways. It's about 1.5 miles. But there are some paths in Carson Park. We've got a wood chip path that pretty much follows along the lake. It goes down over the edge in some areas and gets a lot closer to the lake than the roadway does. And I think that offers some aspects of Carson Park that not everybody in the city is familiar with. Second area in Carson Park is at the south end, and there's a wilderness area there that is designated as a wetland, but there are some paths through there that I don't think very many people in Eau Claire have been through. And I think that offers, if somebody would take the paths at that location of the park, I think they would find some sights in Carson Park that they've never seen before.
And what might be some of the things that they should be looking for to observe through Carson Park in any of those places you described?
Well, I think the plant life in Carson Park is really varied, and I think there's all sorts of different fauna and flora that they can see, and we do have in that southern end some of the plants that are marked, and people can learn about those. There's a little bit of a nature trail there. There's a lot of animal habitat that can be seen. I was just going through the park on a Saturday morning pretty early the other day, and there was an owl that was sitting in a tree. So there are a lot of sights to see in Carson Park that if people just go and run through the park or stick to the roadways, they probably aren't going to see them.
They miss them. And I always think that as a person gets interested in something like that, they might want to have a little book at home that when they get home they can continue their tour, so to speak, or their program by checking up in the book on birds or plants or what have you that they might want to check out and see what the proper name is and all that.
Well, one of the things that my family's done is, not at Carson Park, but we've gone out and started a little bit of amateur bird watching, and that's what we do, is we get a book so we know what we're looking at.
I have thought there's nothing wrong with somebody getting off the path in Carson Park and just striking off through the trees and so on there, is there, Ken?
No, the north end of Carson Park is still pretty much in its natural state, and I think that provides an area where people can get off the path and go and kind of look around Carson Park again and see things that you don't normally see if you just stick to the roadway.
And I think, too, that just to mention that some elderly people can walk quite a ways on the grass or on the sod, or like me in my garden, but get me on the sidewalk or some of these hard floors, and it kills me in a little while. So they should keep that in mind.
That's right.
Yeah. All right, Ken, I'm thinking about down around the river and so on. You've got some paths and ways down through there that would be great for sauntering, don't you?
Well, at the present time, our department is involved in trying to develop really a waterway system of trails that will go along Half-Peak and then along the Eau Claire and Chippewa rivers. And before the master plan, which was before that's completed, will be many, many years. But there is a good percentage of it that will be completed within the next year or two. And we're looking at working with the state, and the state DNR is going to be constructing a regional trail that will connect up with the existing Red Cedar Trail that goes out of Menominee. And so there will be a trail that connects Menominee and Eau Claire, and it goes along a railroad right away.
And a water trail or whatever along the water would bring in to play some different types of waterfowl, for example, and plants and trees and so on too, wouldn't it?
Yes, I think one of the areas that we've already constructed the trail goes from 3rd Avenue right near Community State Bank and goes through the university property, goes underneath the footbridge, and I think that gives you a view of the river that you don't get very often. It brings you right down to the river's edge, and I think it's a very nice trail, and hopefully people will be able to take advantage of it. And
I wonder, you mentioned the university. I suppose people could saunter around to the campus down there too and see there's a mini creek and all that.
Well, I think one of the best areas for sauntering is through Putnam Park, and it's a gravel road, and so it's good on the feet and the shins. And then the second part of the trail is on the other side, right along the Chippewa, where they have a wood chip trail, and I don't think a lot of people know that.
Well, Ken, it's great to have you give us the time goes so fast, but fill us in on that. And there is great variety. We could conclude that from what you've told us right here at Eau Claire. And I don't know what you think, but I think it's nice to have a cane along with you. Elderly people may need it for more reasons than one, but it's kind of nice, I think, especially if you're with somebody to point out what you're hearing or looking at.
You bet.
Thanks much, and we'll be back, old friends, with someone else to tell us more about places to saunter in Eau Claire County. Geez, once again, old friends, we're back with another guest. We learned from our first guest, Ken, from the Recreational Department here in Eau Claire, about some of the great places to saunter in the city of Eau Claire. Now we're going to move out a little bit to Eau Claire County, at least. And we have with us, as our guest, Tom Thompson. Tom?
Good morning.
Good morning to you. Glad to have you with us. Tell us where you're from and what your duties are.
Well, I'm the naturalist out at Beaver Creek Reserve. Maybe you remember it as the Eau Claire County Youth Camp.
Yes, that comes clear to me, yes. But it's called now the Beaver Creek Reserve.
Right.
Well, I'll start out like I did with Ken. Tom, what do you think about this art of sauntering?
I think it's a great idea. It's the kind of thing that I enjoy so much that I actually do it for a living. I usually have guests along with me to guide, but yeah, sauntering is an excellent activity.
I'm sure that you have a lot of people come down there, and I hope elderly people too, to the camp.
Certainly.
Do you conduct them on tours and all that?
Yes, we do.
Now, could, say, a man and his wife or a few couple or anybody just drive down there and go out on their own and saunter some of your pathways and so on?
Yes, Beaver Creek is open to the public 7 days a week. Weekends are a popular time for people to walk on their own. We have self-guided nature trails, signposts along the way describing some of the sights and sounds, or they can get off the trails and make their own path. Lots to see.
That's all right too. Now, what might, as we would saunter through the park down there, your area, what might be some of the things we're going to see in the way of wild?
Well, one of the good things about sauntering, it never gets boring because it changes seasonally, so you don't see everything the first and only time you go. So springtime is time for frogs and their mating calls, songbirds and their calls. Many of the migratory birds are coming through on the way to their nesting grounds farther north. So especially along creeks and rivers, warblers this time of the year. In fact, we're right in the middle of the prime warbler migrating time right now. Kind of fun to watch.
Yes, indeed. And then I go home and get out the book and...
field guides are very valuable.
Or bring them right along with them.
Yep, or bring them along.
Now, are you down there in that particular area, you have waterways, a creek or the river? Is the river?
Yes, Beaver Creek is named for Beaver Creek that runs through our property. It's a crystal clear trout stream, a nice looking stream, lots of wildlife habitat.
I remember it best from probably over 40 years ago, before it was ever thought of as a nature place. Then, do you have little benches or anything along the way where somebody got tired, they might want to sit down?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, we decided that was a good idea, and as a response to people who were interested in taking a break from the walking and just sitting and listening, there are strategically placed benches quite often.
And What about people who get down there? Would it be a good idea for them to report in to you that they are there if they come just for a hike on their own?
Sure, that makes sense. That's not required, but
I see.
if they do, someone in the Nature Center will be able to maybe point out some things that are in the area this season, some of the flowers that are blooming this season, maybe where to look for the current porcupine tracks or the beaver gnawings. So it would be valuable to stop at the desk.
Do you have, are you open there in the winter time too?
Yes, we're open year-round in the winter. During the winter, we have cross-country ski trails, sauntering on skis. We have a well-established snowshoe trail and snowshoes available for people to use.
Tom, I think we should point out, if we didn't before, that we're talking two elderly people and inviting them. But I'm sure what we're saying can apply to just about anybody as far as their enjoyment of sauntering and the things that you fellows have pointed out to us. Yes. Now, is there somebody there all the time at the headquarters?
Usually, yes. We're open from 8 to 4:30 every day. On weekends, the Nature Center is staffed by volunteers, so usually there's someone there.
Now, there's other places in the county. Any particular place in other parts of the county where you might like to tell somebody?
Boy, Eau Claire County has a lot of places for walking. Coon Fork Lake has a well-established self-guided nature trail along the upper end of Coon Fork Lake in the old riverbed. Phillips County Park has a self-guided nature trail along a nice trout stream, different kinds of habitat. And besides those specifically designated walking trails, during the summertime, several of the county ski trails are nice places to walk too.
In the summertime?
In the summertime,
yes,
right.
I see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a lot of variety. And down in that area, do we have anything, say, just west of Eau Claire? Of course, we got lots right here at Eau Claire. That kind of takes care of that, I suppose.
Yes, I'm not real familiar with west of Eau Claire. Lots of county property east of Eau Claire.
And then I'm sure that a lot of our elderly people will have areas where they remember as youngsters.
I'm sure.
There, I always think it might be good if somebody else owns the property just to ask them. Because I remember going down to our old farm a time or two. We stopped and said, well, would it be all right, the people who own it now, if we could just move, go up over the ridge and down to the valley and the streams and so on, just to meander around and see the old place. But it's nice to ask, because
most landowners are quite generous if you ask.
Especially in something like that when you're back to see where you're born and raised and so on. Yeah, we have so many different things to see in your area where you described as all the birds and animals, and down there you're going to see deer, aren't you? Where you have to see the deer?
Yes, it's a quite well-populated area with deer.
And as well as the birds and the flowers and so on. Good time of the year for the wildflowers right now, right?
Yes, as you've noticed, spring is a little slow this year, so not much is blooming yet. A few pasque flowers, small delicate flowers. Even though the skunk cabbage has sort of a nasty smell, it's still sort of an interesting looking plant to find, and they've started.
And one of the early ones.
And one of the earliest, yeah.
I suppose you might even see a skunk down your way, right? Sometime?
Probably smell a skunk walk by. They'll probably see us coming before and wander off into the woods.
Yeah, once in a while that can happen. And trout are in the stream down there?
Yes. Yes.
Now, if people want to go down and spend a little longer time, is there any place they can get a bite to eat down there, or should they bring their own sandwich?
Probably bring the sack lunch would be a good idea.
Yeah, because you don't regularly do that. Yeah.
Fall Creek is about 4 or 5 miles away, so you could run to Fall Creek for lunch.
Yeah, well, your place would be a place where you could, I think our elderly people, maybe an hour or two, And they can always come back another day and kind of start in where they
Oh,
left off.
and every day there will be new flowers blooming and new birds to hear and new animals to see.
And then, like you said, spring is one thing, summer, and then fall, and then in the wintertime. Our elderly people have a few extra things to think about in the wintertime. We probably get to them later. I believe our time is up, Tom, and we thank you so much for coming up and being with us.
My pleasure.
And we hope many of our elderly citizens will see you down there at the Beaver Creek Preserve.
Right.
And I'm sure they have already, and we hope that more of them will too. So thank you once again. We'll be back with another segment of our program, talking to somebody about, some of the things to be a little leery of, wary of, and so on, and prepared for it when we go sauntering. And in a minute, we'll be back. Greetings once again, old-timers, old friends. We hope you're still with us, and I hope you haven't gone looking for that cane right away. Do it a little later so as to get out and get sauntering until we get all of our program to here. By the way, speaking about the cane, this is kind of a light little cane. You know what kind of a cane you might need. Some folks need a pretty heavy cane to balance themselves, to lean on when they rest, and others a little cane like this or even lighter, more or less to, twirl it around and point to the trees and the birds and the flowers and so on. Now we have with us Mary Jo Pape from the YMCA. And Mary Jo, it's so good to have you with us here now to sort of wind things up. Tell us about yourself, what your title is, what your business is.
I'm an employee of the YMCA. I'm a fitness leader, and I have been one for 11 years.
You've been here for 11 years? Huh?
At the YMCA.
Well, you.
And my main programs are a senior fitness program.
With the seniors. So you know a lot of our seniors then.
A lot of them, yeah.
Yes. And what do you think about our art of sauntering here and what we're thinking about doing?
I agree with Ken. Anything that will get people out walking in the fresh air is fantastic at any age.
And don't you think, though, to distinguish a little bit from what we're thinking about sauntering, that it does so much good for your mind and so on, rather if you just get out and blindly walk, slow, fast, or any other way, because we include in our art of sauntering what we're going to see and to be looking for things and so on. Adds a little to it, wouldn't it?
Oh, I think that anytime you can get out and clear your head and do some nice soul searching is great, plus getting exercise at the same time.
Right. Now, you heard us talking here about where we're going to do some sauntering in parks, and probably right across through the middle of the park, maybe in the path, and maybe not along the river and down at the center. What might be some of the precautions or the preparations that our elderly people might make before they start out?
Okay. First of all, I guess I would think just good common sense is probably a good rule to go by. Comfortable clothing, if it's a cold day, warm clothing, and good shoes to wear, good comfortable walking shoes so that your feet and your legs and your back won't give you any trouble. And preferably walking during the daylight hours.
I see, yeah, right. Be sure you're going to be back to your car or back home before it gets dark.
Correct. The footing gets a little off.
Yeah.
If you're in, especially if you're in an area where you're not that familiar with the layout.
You speak about the shoes you'll wear. And since we're many times stepping on little stones and on little twigs and big twigs and so on and so forth, shouldn't the shoes be sort of a solid sole shoe of some kind rather than tennis shoes, so-called?
Well, a nice solid soled shoe. Yeah. There's a lot of tennis shoes that are that way with a nice arch and good support on the bottom that are not going to slip.
Yeah, a little protection there.
Correct.
Now, elderly people, many of them are taking some kind of medication and so on regularly at home and all that. You got a little warning about them before they go sauntering?
Any kind of exercise will raise your heart rate. If you're on any type of medication, that will raise it more rapidly. As far as high blood pressure, if you're on cholesterol medication, heart medication, anything like this. I think the best rule to follow is to check with your physician first and tell him this is what you're planning on doing.
I see.
And ask if he has any rules that you should follow.
That might be a little different than just when they're around home.
Right.
Yes, I see. And, well, that's a good thing to remember and to check on, all right. And some of the people might have to be quite aware of temperatures. Maybe some could hike in the summer, but not in the fall as it gets cool. Would we have this?
Some of the medication would make that limited.
I see, yes.
Just like some people cannot handle being out in the cold as far as breathing. So spring and fall and summer would be a better time to walk. Then again, there are people who have allergies, so the winter would be a better time to walk.
Yes.
There's always cautions to be taken as far as walking in the winter, which is why it's a good idea to walk with someone.
Now, there's a good point. Try to get a partner, right? Some kind or another.
Yes, just for company and then for safety's sake.
Yes.
In case anything goes wrong, you have someone
Surely.
there with you.
And then if you do hear that bird there, or the cricket or what, you can discuss it together as to.
You have someone to share it with.
Yes, to share it with, and maybe help to distinguish which kind of a bird it is too. What about? Anything good or bad about taking a lunch along, depending upon how long you're going to stay, of course? I would think of that, you see.
You would think of that.
Lunch, yeah.
Drinking something to drink would be very important.
And this summer certainly is.
Yes.
I suppose, yeah.
And sitting down and relaxing will also give your heart a chance to relax. It'll bring your heart rate back down. And it'll give you also a chance to rest and eat your lunch, and then keep on sauntering after that. But at a nice leisurely pace.
That's
and
okay.
preferably about 30 minutes 3 times a week.
To saunter, now let me get this, saunter 30 minutes 3 times a week.
If you're just starting out.
Yes, all right. You could, depending upon how you feel, I suppose,
Right.
make it a little longer and so
Right.
on. Yeah, well, there's good. We start in easy.
Well, and do some nice easy breathing to warm up, and nice easy breathing when you stop.
Yeah. Now, if anybody should feel a little unusual dizziness or anything, and they're out hiking, what better they do?
I would suggest they sit down and rest.
Right away.
Take some nice deep breaths in that. They might have these reactions if they are on medication, but this would be something that they would already be alerted to ahead of time.
Of course, don't you find now you've got a lot of these elderly people that you're working with, you've got them all in pretty good health, so aren't they a pretty tough bunch?
Oh, they're
Or are
a
they?
hardy bunch.
A hardy bunch, all right.
They're really, I found that people, the senior citizens, are real in tune to themselves. They're real aware of their limits and their capabilities.
Yes.
So they listen real closely to their body. If they're tired, they'll relax.
Yeah.
If they're on medication, they know what their limits are, which is great, especially when you're a senior citizen and you are exercising. This is important at any age.
I expect as we get into cold or icy weather that seniors should be pretty, think twice before they go sauntering out at all. Or what would you believe?
I would suggest in that kind of weather that they do their sauntering indoors,
Yes, I see. And yes.
just for the safety factor.
Yep. And clothing, I guess you mentioned clothing to meet the season and so on.
Correct.
And is there any particular suggestion that you have as to where? We've heard some of these different descriptions. I suppose people would have to make their own decision what they would like to see or what they think they would like to see.
What they would like to see and what their physical capabilities are. If someone has trouble with their feet or walking or has to use a walker, they might want to stay on a better surface.
Yeah.
And again, daylight hours, so you're real sure of your footing.
And you speak about the walker, we can go sauntering with a walker,
Yes,
can't we?
yes, definitely.
They have some wonderful equipment nowadays that we didn't have once upon a time.
Correct.
Yes, I understand. Well,
And even the senior citizens in wheelchairs,
yeah.
someone could push them,
Yeah.
and they would both benefit from it.
And you'd have to have somebody push you that's real dependable.
That would enjoy sauntering.
Yeah, it wouldn't let them get down the lake or something.
That's true. We don't want that to happen.
Yeah. Well, that's fine. Any other particular final thing as we wrap up here that you would want to drop to the elderly about?
Just to stress the importance of sauntering at any age. You don't have to go at a fast pace. You don't have to do it for hours at a time. You can do it anywhere. If you have 5 minutes in your day, saunter up and down your street.
And if they're real observing, they're going to find so many things interesting that I'm sure they'll want to go out the
As
next
soon as
day.
you walk out the door.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mary Jo, for being with us.
You're welcome.
And good luck to you in your work, and keep those elderly people in good health and all that. And thanks for some of your suggestions here on how to best safely saunter.
You're welcome.
Now, let's see. I think I had some announcement to make, but I don't know what it was. I can't think of it now to end up our program. I might, no, I don't have it here. I thought I had a note on it, but I guess not. Anyhow, our time is up. Thanks for being with us again. And oh, yes, we have one more. This is the last. I believe this is the last in our series this spring. And perhaps we'll be back in the fall with some more of our programs to visit with the elderly. Goodbye. Greetings, old friends. It's nice to be back with you again this fall after our series of programs last spring. And I hope you've had a good summer. Maybe you did a little hiking around. What did we call it? Sauntering in one of our programs, The Art of Sauntering. I hope that you're maybe getting ready, making plans to feed the birds this fall. We talked about that. And gardening and a number of other things, as well as those old schoolhouses. The kids are back in school now, but not in those old schoolhouses that we talked about. Well, we're starting a new series this fall, and this will be our first one. It's going to be on the subject of Scandinavian heritage, and that's what we're starting out with today. And by the way, the programs will be each Wednesday starting on September the 12th, Wednesday morning on at 10 a.m. each Wednesday morning. So we hope that you will be with us then. Well, today we're going to make our start then now, and I'm going to introduce you to Larry Wallstrom. Larry, nice to have you with us.
Nice to be here.
And we got a lot of things to talk about, and we can't talk about everything that we would like to talk about. Time doesn't permit. But Larry, you're president, I believe, of the Scandinavian cultural group. You tell us the right title.
Yeah, the title is Midwest Institute of Scandinavian Culture.
All right. Now, located here, the headquarters in Eau Claire. Mm-hmm. How old and how long has this been in existence?
It was organized in 1960, in fact on July 5th, 1960, by a group of 8 people who got together and decided that we ought to have an organization which would encompass all 5 Scandinavian elements. And those 5, of course, are Finland, Iceland, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden.
All right, all right. I was wondering about that. I'd like to ask you the why of each one, but we might have time a little later on. Well, now, a bit about yourself. Are you a native of this area?
No, I was born north of Green Bay, 100 miles, in a little place called Aurora, Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. And that is just across the state line from Iron Mountain, Michigan.
All right.
So,
how long have you been here then?
Been here since 1948.
And what has been your work while you're here?
Well, I've been teaching at university. I taught, well, I was chairman of the department there for 32 years, of the mathematics department.
Oh, yeah.
And then I taught a few years beyond that. So altogether, I've taught 50 years before retirement.
And now you're retired.
That's right.
And, well, this will be a good a bit of work for you and interesting to you, too. May I ask you, are you a Swede, Finlander, Norwegian?
My background is Swedish. Both my parents came from Sweden. Mm-hmm. They came in the late 1800s and settled. My father first settled in a little place in Michigan called Norway, Michigan. And my mother, of course, settled in Wisconsin. Mm-hmm. So they got married after they got here.
Yes, I see.
But no, I was brought up in Aurora, Wisconsin.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think you told me you left the little town up there about the time you were through high school.
That's right.
Started to college, I suppose.
That's right.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I went to high school in Iron Mountain, Michigan.
Oh, yes.
And then I went to Lawrence College, now Lawrence University, and then from there to Madison, where I eventually got my degree.
I see. Mm-hmm. Did you have any remember your parents or grandparents talking about why they came to Wisconsin?
Well, yes, it's a kind of a long story, but to summarize it, times were pretty hard in Sweden where they lived. My father, my grandfather, of course, lived on a farm, and conditions were very poor. So they came to the land of promise, and that's why they came. My mother came because her brother had come, and he was working in the mines in Florence County.
Well, they all had good reasons, and
That's right.
it's good that they come. We're going to take a little breather here now, and then we'll be back. Larry, and you've got some things to tell us about that, our developments in your organization.
All right.
In a minute. We're going to continue our with Larry Wallstrom, who is president of the Midwest Institute of Scandinavian culture.
That's correct.
All right, for an Irishman, I didn't do too bad on
that's
that.
the same. Right.
Well, Larry, you've got some big developments, and I think we should spend some time now on that. What are some of the plans in the making here?
Okay, a number of years ago, we decided that we wanted to build a center here in the Eau Claire area for the promotion of Scandinavian culture. That is to make to help people, no matter what their ethnic background or what their race and so on, to help them to learn more about Scandinavian culture. So we decided to found the Midwest Institute of Scandinavian Culture, although at that time when it was founded we called it the Wisconsin Institute of Scandinavian Culture. And so we eventually got one of the world's most famous architects to come up with some preliminary drawings for us. His name is Alvar Aalto, a Finlander. He's very well known throughout the world. He is dead now, but his senior assistant is carrying on. His senior assistant lives in California. So then through one event after another, we eventually purchased some land west of Eau Claire. And so we have 69 acres west of Eau Claire.
And I know it's a beautiful site too, isn't it? Overlooking the Chippewa River.
It's bounded on the west by Elk Creek and on the south by the Chippewa River, and then on the north by the county highway.
Now, what will the building encompass?
Okay, I'd like to show you a brochure, if I may,